Hello and welcome. I'm Daniel Choy with this Sunday evening's edition of Arirang News. Let's start with the president's continued efforts outside of Korea. President Park Geun-hye is now in Lima, Peru, the second stop on her South America tour. Over the next 3 days, she will seek ways to spur cooperation with Peru that go beyond trade and investment. Our Choi You-sun sends us this report all the way from Lima.
Amid much fanfare over her visit, President Park Geun-hye is scheduled to have a summit meeting with Peruvian President Ollanta Humala on Monday.
Even before her arrival, local media reported on President Park's visit and the future of Seoul-Lima relations.
In an interview with Peruvian daily Gestion, President Park said she recognized how far the two sides have come since implementing their FTA in 2011. She said it's now time for Seoul and Lima to talk about cooperating on infrastructure, healthcare, and defense. In fact, there is speculation about whether her latest visit will pave the way for Korea to export its combat aircraft, including the F-A-50, to Peru. Korea Aerospace Industries is currently trying to sell the F-A-50 to Peru. During the president's visit, a ceremony will be held to mark the first local production of a Korean trainer jet, the KT-1P. Earlier, President Park spent her final day in Colombia, offering her thanks to Colombian veterans who fought in the Korean War. Colombia was the only South American country to send troops, and nearly 700 Colombians were either killed or injured in the battle.
Siempre nuestra amistad existirá, crecerá. Y la recordarán los hijos de nuestras dos naciones.
She spoke one-on-one with a veteran whom she had met 40 years ago during her father's presidency, and with another veteran who had sent a letter saying he wants to visit Korea. President Park also met with Koreans who live in Colombia, praising their support for the veterans and their families. She added that as the two countries boost cooperation, there will be more opportunities for them in Colombian society. Choi You-sun, Arirang News, Lima.
Well, back here in the nation, Prime Minister Lee Won-gu made a public appearance on Sunday, his first since allegations of his involvement in a graft scandal prompted the main opposition party to demand his resignation. The Prime Minister attended a ceremony on Sunday to commemorate the 55th anniversary of the April 19th revolution. There, he called for the creation of an atmosphere for achieving a peaceful reunification on the Korean peninsula and upgrading the country's image by strengthening democracy. The event was one of the many festivities around the nation on Sunday, honoring the student democracy activists who led the uprising in 1960 that resulted in President Lee Seung-man's resignation. Prime Minister Lee Won-gu is accused of taking bribes from a businessman who claimed to have given money to 8 heavyweight politicians before committing suicide earlier this month. The South Korean companies at the Gestion industrial complex are in a tough position right now as the standoff between the two Koreas over workers' wages continues. North Korea says it will refuse to accept any wages without a pay hike, while South Korea doesn't want the companies to yield to Pyongyang's demands. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
South Korea's Gestion business owners are stuck in a dilemma. On the one hand, they're facing the prospect of having to pay a late fee if they don't comply with the North's demand for a wage hike. But on the other hand, they face the possibility of punitive measures from the South if they do. None of the 124 South Korean companies have paid the March wages yet, which are due April 20th. North Korea has threatened to impose a late fee of 15% per month if the South Korean companies don't issue the wage payments on time. South Korea says it will not accept the North's unilateral demand for a wage hike, saying Pyongyang violated a 2004 agreement that calls for 2 quasi-governmental committees to set the pay rate together. Last week, the two committees met to discuss the issue but failed to reach a compromise, and the likelihood of another meeting is unclear. In addition, Seoul has warned the South Korean companies operating in the complex that they will face punitive measures if they concede to the North's wage hike demands. The two Koreas have been at odds over the issue since February, when the North unilaterally decided to raise the wage level by more than 5% to roughly $74 a month starting in March for the approximately 53,000 North Korean workers in the complex. Seoul's Unification Ministry says it is still sending messages to Pyongyang, asking to meet on the wage issue, but the North maintains that it's a matter for Pyongyang to decide. Kim Young-gin, Arirang News.
Outside of Korea, economic growth in developed countries has strengthened, but some emerging nations are being hit by weaker commodity prices and exports. That was the warning issued by the International Monetary Fund during its annual spring meeting in Washington on Saturday. IMF member nations said policymakers should take further measures to lift actual and potential growth as the global economic recovery remains moderate and uneven. They also said, with the U.S. poised to hike interest rates, it is essential that moves toward policy normalization are accompanied by an effective communication of changes to reduce the risks of spillovers. There were a few signs of a renewed flare-up in the currency wars, but China's growing economic clout with its new development bank, the AIIB, overshadowed the talks. The two-day meeting concludes today. Korea's slowing exports are raising alarm bells for the export-reliant Korean economy, prompting the government to step in and get exports back on track, particularly to China, Korea's #1 export destination. For more, here's our Kim Ji-yeon.
Korean exports slipped for a fourth straight year last year. The Korea International Trade Association says the country's exports increased a mere 4.4% in 2014, a stark contrast to the figure recorded in 2010, when exports increased 22% from the previous year. In particular, exports of petrochemical and oil products, LCD panels, and telecommunications equipment fell in 2014. The agency says the fall is mainly due to the slow global economic recovery, the drop in oil prices, and increased competition from China. Since Korea is highly dependent on exports for growth, the downward momentum has raised alarm bells for the local economy. In response, the Trade Ministry unveiled measures earlier this week to help boost exports, particularly to China, which currently takes up a quarter of Korea's export volume. Under the plan, the ministry says it will support local firms seeking to expand into China's e-commerce market. It's also planning to provide consultation for exporters of consumer goods, such as cosmetics, health and beauty products, and dietary supplements, to help them increase their footing in the Chinese market. However, it remains to be seen whether the measures will be effective. During the January to March period, exports dropped nearly 3% from the same period last year to $133.6 billion. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Staying on trade numbers, imports now, one visible impact of Korea's free trade deals with Chile is the spike in grape imports. Data compiled by the Korea Customs Service shows Korea imported more than 47,000 tons or $152 million worth of grapes from Chile last year, or more than 80% of all grape imports in the year 2014. Korea imported a total of 59,000 tons of grapes last year, or $189 million worth. That's a new record in grape imports and a sharp increase from the 28,000 tons in the year 2009 and 9,900 tons in 2004. Korea's grape imports from Chile have spiked since 2004 after the FTA between the two countries went into effect. Tariffs on Chilean grapes were removed entirely in January 2014. The gaps between the haves and the have-nots is widening among Korean companies. Yonhap News reports that the net profit of the country's top 30 firms, mainly big conglomerates, accounted for 80% of the combined net profit earned by Korean businesses last year. That's a huge jump from the 48% recorded by the two top conglomerates back in 2010. In particular, Samsung and Hyundai Motor Group accounted for more than 4/5 of the top 30 companies' combined net profit of $38.4 billion. Asiana Airlines says it will compensate all of the passengers who were on board the plane that skidded off the runway in Japan last week. Korea's second-largest flag carrier said Saturday via its Japanese website that it will pay $5,000 in damages to every passenger who was on the flight from Seoul to Hiroshima for the various inconveniences the botched landing may have caused. The Japan Transport Safety Board says the flight appears to have run into a localizer, a gate-like structure. There were more than 70 people on the flight, and thankfully, there were no casualties. There were no fatalities, rather. 25 were injured, but none were seriously hurt. Asiana has since suspended all of its flights to Hiroshima pending safety checks. Moving over to the realm of sports, golfer Kim Se-young has clinched her second career LPGA Tour victory, boosting her chances of earning Rookie of the Year honors this year. Powered by a pair of stunning shots in the final stretch and closing with a 1/73, the rookie sensation raised a cup at the Lotte Championship in Hawaii on Saturday, becoming the first Korean LPGA golfer to win 2 tours this year. En route to the crown, Kim defeated a field crowded with her fellow Koreans, including the world number 3, Park Geun-hye. Kim In-young blinked first with a bogey on the 17th hole. The rising star took home the $270,000 purse to move into first place on the money list with $699,000. So far this year, 5 South Koreans have combined for 6 victories in 9 LPGA tournaments. Moving on to weather, be sure to put on your raincoat or pack an umbrella if you're in Korea today and tomorrow. The rain is expected to continue nationwide until early Monday morning. Drivers, we need to be careful, not just because of slippery roads, but because of foggy conditions that could hinder your visibility. You'll also want to dress warm since it will be a chilly 11 degrees Celsius in the capital. And now let's check out the weather conditions outside of Korea, in your neck of the woods and around the world. And that does it for us for now. For more, tune in at 10 p.m. Korea time. Thank you for watching.